Today on Up Front, a stalemate on the state budget. The Senate and Assembly have different ideas on what to do. Next, Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald on where lawmakers go from here. Then,
safety! Safety!
the plan to punish UW students who shout down campus speakers, why some faculty members are concerned. And the next race for state Supreme Court, signs it could be more political than ever.
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Up Front with Mike Goucher.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Up Front. Depending on who you've been listening to, the next two-year state budget is either on track to be finished on schedule around July 1st, or it's at an impasse. The Republican-led Senate and Assembly can't seem to agree on big issues like education and transportation, what to spend and how. Last week, Governor Walker brought together leaders from both chambers to hash out their differences and later said he thinks lawmakers will finish the budget in early July. But Assembly Speaker Robin Vos said it could be later than that, much later. Joining me now with his perspective is the Senate Majority Leader, Scott Fitzgerald, the Republican from Juneau. Senator, it's good to have you back on the program.
Good to be with you.
So you're going to be done by early July?
That's still my goal. I mean, the state Senate continues to kind of plow through each and every topic that's part of the state budget. We had a good week this past week, I think. Finance members have taken up the Fiscal Bureau papers and are working through them just as they would in any other budget process. So we're going to be prepared, I think, as a caucus to know exactly kind of where we're at in a number of these big issues very soon, maybe as early as late next week. And then I'm hopeful that we can kind of bring this thing back together, get the finance team up and running again, and conclude somewhere around the 1st of July.
So you don't think that, as Speaker Vos has said, you don't think this could go well past July 4th, for instance?
I'm not sure why it would. I'm not sure what they might be holding out for. I was a little surprised that they kind of walked away from the table this past week. And I'm hopeful that we can, this is a process that has served us well in this state, and I want to make sure that we continue to utilize it.
What's going on here between the Assembly and the Senate? I mean, you're all Republicans. On the basic stuff, you seem to agree, but yet you can't seem to find common ground on education, on transportation. What's behind that?
I don't know if it's necessarily the Senate and the Assembly. It appears that the Assembly is at odds with some of the things that Governor Walker has made pretty much paramount in his career. He said, listen, we're going to hold the line on property tax bills in Wisconsin. We're not going to let them creep up like had happened for many, many years in Wisconsin. And the other thing is, he says, listen, when it comes to transportation, I am not comfortable raising taxes, whether it's vehicle registration or the gas tax. And I think that's where the bind is right now between the Speaker and the Governor.
You're okay with what the Governor's saying?
We are. I think the state Senate is aligned with Governor Walker. There's some things we're going to tweak. There's some things that we're going to make changes to. And the Governor's been open to that. He said, when it comes to the tax cuts or other packages, other items that might be part of his budget, I'm flexible. I'll work with you. But on those two items, he's not. And as a result of that, the Senate continues to push on. And the Assembly is kind of out there trying to sell other things.
I get your response to what Speaker Vos said last week. He said that you're a rubber stamp for the Governor.
Yeah,
what do you think about that?
I think I checked my brain at the door, he said, as well. So, no, I disagree. I mean, we know it's way too early for those types of games, too. I mean, the Finance Committee had at least 2 more days that they could have gone in and cleaned up some of the smaller items. That's my biggest disappointment. I'm not sure why he walked away from the table. And I'm just hopeful we can bring it back together very soon.
On transportation, the Governor at least indicated some willingness to talk about tolls. That's something you've talked about, and that's something Speaker Vos has talked about in the past.
Right.
Are tolls going to be part of any agreement on transportation in this budget?
It could be. We kind of find ourselves in a unique situation when it comes to tolling right now, in that the federal government has some slots that are available to states to do some open.
2, right?
Yeah, at least there's 2 right now.
Yeah.
And there's some talk about an infrastructure package that could be more significant, that could kind of open that up even wider. But it's on existing roadways. That revenue could be used on those roadways. And it's part of the discussion that otherwise hasn't been there. But, open road tolling generates billions of dollars, not millions. And I think it will be part of the discussion right up until the end.
It couldn't be just at the Illinois state line, though, could it? That wouldn't generate enough money to make it worthwhile, would it?
There's a lot of different ways you can do it. It kind of depends on what the feds want to see in place once you move in that direction. So I wouldn't rule anything out. I'm just saying I think it should be part of the discussion that hasn't happened before, really, in any serious way.
Yeah,
So.
and in the meantime, what do we do? If tolls could be part of it, but that's down the road, really.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the governor's budget, and he's got about $500 million in bonding, which I think is reasonable. Some members of my caucus are still kind of weighing that. And then you can get some of these mega projects back on track if you would do some general purpose revenue supported bonding as well. That mix, I think, my members will support at the end of the day, and I feel comfortable we can get there. So we don't need the gas tax increase. We don't need the vehicle registration fee to figure this out. And I wish the Assembly would abandon that strategy right now.
So, completely unrelated topic. You're going to be at the fundraiser for Governor Walker on Tuesday. The president is going to be here in town.
Right. Yeah.
You were on the Trump train early.
Right.
Does he still have the support of the party, of the base of the party? How do you feel about where he is right now?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the national numbers, they clearly show that, the president has maybe lost some popularity. But I think if you look at certain pockets, specifically throughout our state, he's still doing very well. So that'll be interesting to see how those numbers are sustained and whether or not it carries all the way through to the next election cycle, because that could be very important, especially in a state like Wisconsin, where we're going to have a couple of very unique statewide races with U.S. Senate and a gubernatorial.
Are you okay personally with how he's performed? I mean, you've got the Comey firing, the Russia investigation. Are you okay with him right now?
I hear from constituents all the time that love it that he's shaking up D.C.
They're not bothered by that.
They're not bothered by it. I mean, if you get anything, you say, boy, I wish you wouldn't tweet as much. But other than that, people are still, I think those that supported him are saying he's doing exactly what we expected him to do, shake up D.C.
Scott Fitzgerald is the Senate Majority Leader, the Republican from Dodge County. It's good to have you back on the program
today. Thank you. Good to be with you.
Our editorial partner, WisPolitics.com, has coverage of the state assembly's plan for funding K-12 education. You'll find that at WisPolitics.com and on Twitter. State lawmakers want to get tough with UW students who disrupt campus speakers, often conservative speakers.
USA! USA!
Next on Up Front, why some faculty members are worried about what's been called the Campus Free Speech Bill.
Up Front with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company.